Okay, so get this. Imagine if Lee Harvey Oswald, the man accused of assassinating President Kennedy,
Yeah.
had openly talked about killing a president years before the tragedy.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're diving into today.
Wow.
You've sent over some excerpts from the fourth decade,
Right.
a journal dedicated to JFK assassination research. And we're focusing on a 2000 article
Okay.
titled Oswald in North Dakota.
It's a fascinating article
Yeah.
that really digs into some lesser-known aspects of Oswald's life,
Okay.
specifically his potential time in Stanley, North Dakota during the summer of 1953.
The article starts with Eileen Mosby,
Uh-huh.
a journalist who interviewed Oswald in Moscow in 1959.
Right.
Okay.
And in that interview,
Yeah.
Oswald claims his Marxist leanings started when he was just 15.
It's 15.
Yeah, after reading a pamphlet about saving the Rosenbergs.
Interesting.
He even says, then we moved to North Dakota.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where he first read Das Kapital.
Hold on. Doesn't the Warren Commission report say Oswald moved to New Orleans after receiving that pamphlet? Okay.
The Warren Commission records actually state New Orleans, not North Dakota.
Right.
And that's a pretty glaring inconsistency.
Okay. So why does that matter?
Well,
Yeah.
it could be just a simple mistake.
Right.
But this discrepancy raises some serious questions about the accuracy and reliability of the Warren Commission's findings.
Hmm.
Could this be evidence of a cover-up, or at the very least, a sloppy investigation?
Ooh, that's a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
The article then introduces a letter written by a woman named Alma Cole to President Johnson in December 1963.
Right.
What's the deal with that?
This letter is chilling.
Okay.
Alma Cole claimed that her son actually knew Lee Harvey Oswald
Oh, wow.
in Stanley, North Dakota before he joined the Marines.
And according to the article, she recounts a conversation her son had with Oswald,
Right.
where he was reading communist books,
Uh-huh.
and even said he felt a calling to kill the president.
That's right.
Gosh.
And to make it even creepier, Cole quotes Oswald as saying, he didn't know which president, but the time and place would be laid before him.
Wow.
I mean, if that's true,
Yeah.
it suggests a premeditated intention,
Right.
like he was waiting for his moment.
That's a seriously disturbing thought.
Yeah.
So what did the FBI do with this information?
The FBI took Cole's letter seriously.
Okay.
They launched an investigation in Stanley,
Right.
interviewing a number of people who might have known Oswald.
Including Alma Cole's son, William Henry Timmer.
Yes.
Okay.
Timmer's testimony is really interesting.
Okay.
He recalled spending time with a boy named Harvey Oswald during that summer of 1953.
Okay.
He specifically remembers Oswald having communist literature, including a pamphlet by Marx, and even bragging about killing a president someday.
And didn't Timmer later recognize Oswald from a photo after the assassination?
Yes.
Wow.
After the assassination,
Yeah.
Timmer's mother sent him a picture of Oswald,
Okay.
and he confirmed that it was the same Harvey he knew from Stanley. That's a pretty strong piece of evidence.
Yeah.
However, it's not that simple.
What do you mean?
Well,
Yeah.
some of the other people interviewed in Stanley gave conflicting testimonies.
Oh, really?
Some said they never knew an Oswald, while others questioned Alma Cole's mental stability.
So already we're seeing a lot of conflicting information.
Yeah.
Does the article mention anything else about North Dakota?
It does. It brings up a few other instances where North Dakota is linked to Oswald,
Right.
even by official sources.
Right.
For example, there's a 1963 teletype from J. Edgar Hoover
Wow.
that mentions newspaper articles quoting Oswald as having lived in North Dakota.
Wow. If Hoover is mentioning it, that seems pretty significant.
Yeah.
So is there any evidence to refute this?
Well,
Yeah.
in 1964, Abba P. Schwartz,
Uh-huh.
an official from the State Department,
Right.
testified before a Senate subcommittee
Yeah.
that he had no recollection of North Dakota being mentioned in Oswald's State Department files.
So we have official records that both support and contradict Oswald being in North Dakota.
Right.
It's like trying to navigate a maze.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If Oswald was never in North Dakota, why would Hoover even be mentioning it?
Right.
And if he was, why wouldn't it be in his State Department files?
It just keeps getting more complicated.
Yeah.
The article then brings up John Armstrong's 1994 interview of William Henry Timmer.
Yes.
Heck.
Armstrong's interview is fascinating.
Okay.
Timmer confirmed everything he told the FBI years before,
Wow.
and even added that Oswald's father was supposedly working in the North Dakota oil fields at that time.
Okay, that would make sense then, right?
Yeah.
If Oswald's father was working there,
Right.
the family might have been living in Stanley.
It does make that connection more plausible.
Right.
But as always, there are more twists and turns to this story.
Okay, what do we got?
The article then mentions 2 separate interviews with Alma Cole,
Uh-huh.
where she dropped some pretty big bombshells.
Like what?
In these interviews, Cole claims that Oswald's mother, Marguerite, was also living in Stanley with them.
Okay.
She described Marguerite as being loud and wanting everyone to know she was from Texas.
Wow. She really wanted to make an impression.
Yeah.
Is that all she said?
Not even close.
Oh, my God.
Cole also revealed that her son told her that the boy insisted on being called Lee Harvey, not just Lee.
Why is that detail important?
It's interesting because even at that young age,
Yeah.
it suggests that Oswald might have had a desire for a more complete, maybe even a notorious identity.
Okay.
Almost like he wanted to be known for something big.
And as if all that wasn't enough, Cole revealed one final detail. Her son was with Oswald when he stole a book by Marx from a small library in Stanley.
It's another piece of the puzzle that paints a picture of young Oswald as being drawn to communist ideology,
Yeah.
desperate enough to even resort to theft to get his hands on these books.
This is getting wild.
I know, right?
So are there any other interviews mentioned in the article?
Yes. The article also includes interviews with a few other people that Timmer had mentioned.
No.
People like Jerry Evenson, Lane Evans, and Jack Feehan.
And I bet their stories are full of holes too, right?
You got it.
Okay.
Their accounts are full of inconsistencies and memory gaps, which, to be fair, is understandable after so many years.
Right.
But it does make it hard to piece together what really happened.
So where do we go from here?
Right.
We have all these pieces, but they don't seem to fit together.
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
The article explores some different hypotheses to explain these Oswald sightings in North Dakota.
Right.
And those are what we're going to unpack next.
Okay. I'm ready to dive into those hypotheses. Hit me with the first one.
The first, and perhaps the most straightforward hypothesis, is that Lee Harvey Oswald actually was in Stanley, North Dakota in 1953.
Okay, so if that's true, what are the implications?
Well, if this is the case, it means that Oswald's radical leanings and his desire to kill a president were present long before the assassination. We're talking years before.
That raises a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah?
Like, could the assassination have been prevented?
Exactly. If people knew about his radical beliefs and his talk of killing a president, could someone have intervened? It's a chilling thought.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the next hypothesis?
The next hypothesis, and the one that really gets the conspiracy theorists going,
Okay.
is that someone was impersonating Oswald and Stanley.
Hold on. Are we talking about someone purposely creating a fake Oswald
Yeah.
to throw off investigators?
That's exactly what this theory suggests.
Okay.
Imagine someone intentionally creating a false trail, a fabricated legend around Oswald.
Right.
Maybe even years before the assassination took place.
Okay, I'm already hooked. Tell me more about this imposter theory.
Well, this theory gets into some pretty deep waters.
Okay.
It suggests that someone, maybe even a group of people, were setting Oswald up to take the fall for the assassination.
Whoa. This is starting to sound like a spy thriller.
I know, right?
Are there any other hypotheses?
There are, but those two,
Okay.
that Oswald was either in North Dakota or that there was an imposter,
Right.
are the ones the authors really focus on.
Okay.
And honestly, they're the most compelling based on the evidence they present.
Okay.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty of those,
Yeah.
I think it's important to take a step back and look at the big picture.
Okay. Good point. So what does this all mean?
Right.
We've got conflicting testimonies,
Yeah.
official records that don't add up,
Yeah.
and these wild theories about imposters.
Yeah.
Where does that leave us?
It leaves us with a lot more questions than answers, that's for sure.
Right.
But what's fascinating is how this all challenges the traditional narrative of Oswald as a lone gunman acting on a whim.
Right. If he was in North Dakota talking about killing a president years before Dallas, that changes everything.
It suggests a much deeper, more sinister motive,
Yeah.
maybe fueled by extremism or even manipulation by outside forces.
So was Oswald really the mastermind behind the assassination? Or was he a pawn in some bigger, more complex game?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was this a genuine desire for notoriety on Oswald's part, or was he part of a carefully orchestrated plot?
Okay, I'm officially on the edge of my seat. Let's dive into those hypotheses and see if we can unravel this mystery.
Let's do it. So we left off with the idea that either Oswald himself was in North Dakota in 53 or someone was deliberately impersonating him.
Right.
The authors Williams and Severson really try to unpack these two possibilities.
And to be honest, both scenarios are pretty mind-blowing. If Oswald was really there, it paints a much darker picture of him. Like, this wasn't some sudden act. It was something he'd been thinking about for years.
Exactly. And the imposter theory, well, that takes this case into some really murky territory.
Right.
Um, let's dig into that imposter hypothesis a bit more. What kind of evidence do they present to support that idea?
They don't present any concrete proof,
Right.
but they do raise some intriguing points. They argue that if someone was impersonating Oswald, it could explain some of the inconsistencies in the witness testimonies.
Right. Like maybe some witnesses were actually describing the imposter, not the real Oswald. And that would also explain why some official records like the State Department files don't mention North Dakota.
It's almost like someone was planting these seeds, creating a fake history for Oswald that would later be used against him.
Exactly. And remember that detail about Oswald supposedly discovering Das Kapital in North Dakota?
Yeah.
The authors suggest that this could have been part of the imposter's plan to make Oswald look like a hardcore Marxist.
So it's like they were creating this narrative, this image of Oswald as a radical years before the assassination.
Right. Almost like they were setting the stage, building him up as the perfect patsy. And, that idea ties into some of the bigger conspiracy theories surrounding the JFK assassination.
Okay, let's talk conspiracy theories. What are some of the popular ones that connect to this North Dakota angle?
Well, there's the theory that Oswald was working with the Soviets. Some people believe that the Soviets trained him and sent him back to the U.S. to assassinate Kennedy.
And how would North Dakota fit into that theory?
Well, some conspiracy theorists believe that Oswald might have received training from Soviet agents while he was supposedly living in North Dakota. Or taking the imposter idea further. Maybe the Oswald in North Dakota was actually a Soviet agent gathering intelligence.
Ooh, that's getting into some James Bond territory.
Right.
Are there any other conspiracy theories that could connect to this?
Another popular theory is that Oswald was part of a CIA plot to assassinate Kennedy.
Whoa, the CIA.
Yeah.
How would they be involved?
It's complicated.
Oh.
And honestly, there's no real evidence to support it.
Right.
But the theory goes that the CIA was unhappy with Kennedy's policies.
Okay.
And they used Oswald, who had a history with the agency, to carry out the assassination.
But if that's the case, why would they create a fake Oswald history in North Dakota?
Well, according to this theory, the CIA wanted to create a believable backstory for Oswald. One that would make him look like a lone wolf with communist sympathies. So they planted these seeds in North Dakota to make him seem like a threat.
So in this theory, North Dakota wasn't just about framing Oswald for the assassination, but also about shaping public opinion, making people more likely to believe he was capable of such an act.
Exactly. That's the idea. Of course, like I said, there's no hard evidence to support any of these conspiracy theories.
Right.
But it's fascinating to explore how this North Dakota information could potentially fit into those narratives.
Like one big puzzle box, and every time we open a new compartment, there's another layer of mystery.
You're right. And I think that's what makes this whole story so captivating.
Yeah.
Even after all these years, the JFK assassination is still shrouded in mystery and intrigue.
The article itself goes into a pretty deep analysis of the different hypotheses, right?
Yes. They actually lay out 5 different hypotheses to explain the Oswald sightings in North Dakota.
Okay, let's break those down. We already talked about the first 2, which were that Oswald was either in North Dakota or that an imposter was there. What are the other 3?
The third hypothesis is that someone else, completely unrelated to Oswald, just happened to be in Stanley at the same time. And this person also happened to have the same name.
Okay, that seems like a pretty big coincidence.
It is, and the authors quickly dismissed that idea, arguing that it's statistically improbable.
What about the fourth hypothesis?
The fourth hypothesis is that the whole story was fabricated by the reporters who first broke the North Dakota connection.
Interesting. Why would they do that?
The authors suggest that maybe the reporters were trying to create a sensational story, or maybe they were trying to push a particular political agenda.
But wouldn't that be a pretty risky move? I mean, wouldn't they get caught eventually?
You'd think so. And the authors ultimately dismissed this hypothesis too, arguing that both Alma Cole and William Henry Timmer seemed to be credible witnesses who had no reason to lie.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's the fifth and final hypothesis?
The fifth hypothesis is that the reporters were part of a larger effort to build a legend around Oswald.
Like those conspiracy theories we were talking about.
Exactly. This theory suggests that the reporters might have been working with some unknown entity, maybe even a government agency, to create a specific narrative about Oswald.
So they were purposely planting these stories to manipulate public perception of Oswald.
That's the idea. And the authors acknowledge that this hypothesis is difficult to prove or disprove, but it's certainly an intriguing possibility. Ultimately, though, they lean towards the first two hypotheses that Oswald was either physically in North Dakota or that an imposter was there.
Why those two?
They argue that those two hypotheses are the most consistent with the available evidence. And to be honest, those are the ones that make the most sense to me, too. Either Oswald was there building his radical persona, or someone was deliberately creating that persona for him.
So we're left with two very unsettling possibilities.
Well,
Either way, it paints a much darker picture of the JFK assassination than the official narrative.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's what makes this whole deep dive so important.
Yeah.
It forces us to question what we think we know about one of the most significant events in American history.
It really does. This isn't just about figuring out whether or not Oswald spent a summer in North Dakota. It's about understanding the complexities of history, the limitations of evidence, and the possibility that there are forces at play that we might never fully comprehend.
You've got it. And it also reminds us that even the smallest detail, like a single discrepancy in a report, can have massive implications. We can't just take things at face value, especially when it comes to something as significant as the JFK assassination.
So what do you think? Was Oswald in North Dakota, or was there an imposter?
Honestly, I'm not sure. The evidence is so contradictory that it's hard to say for sure, but I think that's the point. This deep dive isn't about finding a definitive answer. It's about exploring the possibilities and challenging our assumptions.
I totally agree. And I think this is a good place to pause we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm sure our listener has a lot to think about.
They do. And we'll pick up this discussion in the next part where we'll explore some of the broader implications of this North Dakota mystery and what it means for our understanding of the JFK assassination.
Okay, we've been deep diving into this Oswald in North Dakota article, and it's really raised more questions than answers for me.
Yeah, it really has.
It's like we're peeling back layers of an onion, and each layer reveals another mystery.
That's a great analogy. The
Well-
more you dig into the JFK assassination, the more you realize how much we don't know.
Right.
And this North Dakota connection just adds another layer of complexity to an already incredibly complicated case.
One thing that really struck me was the power of a carefully constructed narrative. Whether Oswald was really in North Dakota or it was an imposter.
Right.
The idea that someone might have been shaping his image
Yeah.
years before the assassination is chilling.
Absolutely. It really highlights the power of misinformation and how easily people can be manipulated. Imagine someone or some group intentionally creating this backstory for Oswald, making him look like a radical communist with a grudge against the government.
It'd be him the perfect patsy, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Someone the public would be quick to blame.
Right. Someone who would fit the bill perfectly.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it raises serious questions about who was behind it all and what their motives were. Were they trying to protect someone else? Were they trying to advance a specific political agenda?
It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing, and we're left trying to figure out what the picture is supposed to be.
It really is.
Right. And the pieces we do have don't always seem to fit together.
Exactly.
You have conflicting witness testimonies, gaps in official records, and a web of conspiracy theories that's almost impossible to untangle.
Yeah. And some people dedicate their lives to trying to untangle it.
I know, it's incredible.
It's amazing.
It makes you wonder if we'll ever know the full truth about what happened that day in Dallas.
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the search for truth is an ongoing process. And while we may never have all the answers, every new piece of information helps us get a little bit closer.
Speaking of new information, the authors of this article seem to be convinced that Oswald was either in North Dakota or that there was an imposter. Do you agree with their assessment?
Well, I can see why they lean that way.
Yeah.
Those two hypotheses seem to fit the available evidence better than the others.
Right.
But honestly, I'm not ready to completely rule out any of the possibilities.
That's fair. I guess it's important to keep an open mind. Right?
Absolutely. With a case like this, you can't afford to jump to conclusions. You have to consider every angle, every piece of evidence, and every possible explanation.
So what do you think is the most important takeaway from this deep dive? What do you hope our listener walks away thinking about?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of critical thinking,
Right.
especially when it comes to historical events. We can't just accept the official narrative at face value.
Right.
We have to be willing to question everything.
yeah.
To dig deeper.
Yeah.
And to consider alternative perspectives.
I completely agree. And I think this case really highlights how easily history can be manipulated and how important it is to be aware of those manipulations.
It's a reminder that the past is never truly settled.
Right.
New evidence can emerge, new
Yeah.
perspectives can be offered, and our understanding of history can continue to evolve.
This has been a truly fascinating and thought-provoking deep dive.
It has.
It's definitely given me a lot to ponder about the JFK assassination and the mysteries that still surround it.
Me too. And I think it's a great example of how, even decades later, there are still new discoveries to be made and new questions to be asked about this pivotal moment in history.
So to our listener out there, keep digging, keep questioning, and never stop searching for the truth. It might be closer than you think.
That's right. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to uncover the next piece of this complex and endlessly fascinating puzzle.
This has been the Deep Dive, where we take your research and we'll deep dive into it. Until next time, stay curious.